on YouTube. I'm just gonna bring up another one. Or do you have YouTube up to see if it's showing? Yeah, okay. It's oh, she's in here. She beat me to it. She's been in here since I since I was figuring it out. Yep. So perfect. Good on this. Awesome. Awesome. And then I'm going to quickly I had made a bit of a do you hear an echo from me? Because I keep getting a little bit of feedback from myself. No, I don't have YouTube up right now. Ah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Can we let's just mute our Google Meets and then we can just talk through the StreamYard. Perfect. Let's see if that'll help. I don't think I'm hearing an echo anymore, so we're good. Hey Texas, I got the I got the comments coming through. Um, yeah, that's David on there, our CEO, who's making those comments. You can see the comments, right, Libba? Wait a second, I can't hear it through StreamYard. Let me share my screen just to see if I need to share. Okay. Whoa, what did I do here? I must have shared the wrong screen. Entire screen, screen 3, share. Why is it going to that one? Move you over. I guess I'll do it this way. Okay. So am I missing some? Because if I have everything muted and me and Libba are talking in here, I should be able to hear her in StreamYard, right? Farah? Yeah, I can hear. I can hear. Oh, I'm muted. Yeah. Okay. I can hear you. I was muted. So yeah, when we are oh, you could hear me through the YouTube. That's why you could hear what I was saying. Okay. But yeah, I can't hear Libba on StreamYard. Am I missing something button wise for my Oh, do okay. I gotcha. Never mind. One sec. I'm gonna mute myself on here again. All right. So then we could do this one. Add to stream. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Simple button click. Okay. So do we want this one or do we want this one? This is for you, Libba. I don't really have a
Oh, you know what? I was going to ask y'all exactly what you wanted. I know this is busy over here, so I can move all of that out of the way and all we, you know, I didn't know what would look best and what message, you know.
Yeah, no, I think your background looks good. If anything, I need to add something to my background or get rid of this piece here. But I think your background looks good there. And then I need to Farah, do I need to turn on this banner as well. There we go. So we got a nice banner strolling through there. Perfect. And then the other piece here that I wanted to throw on here. Yep. Title. I am just putting together real quick. I didn't get a chance to do this. But I wanted to put together this quick. This is not obviously going to be the finished product here, but I just need to put these in here real quick just so that we can test this part out. One more, and then we'll be ready. All right. So my thoughts, and Libba, this was kind of something we had talked about before, was when we were going to go into the initial call, I thought it might be good. And Catherine Farah, please chime in if you think this is a good idea or a bad idea or whatever. But Libba, we were talking about doing that PowerPoint initially in the beginning of the webinar where we could kind of, from a high level, tell people, okay, if you're new to data and what does better quality versus quantity of data, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're new to that and everything, do we want to? I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, hold on. Present slides or add cancel this one. Faro, which one of these am I still sharing my screen? Where'd you go? This one. Which one of these do I do to add a PowerPoint? Huh? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You, okay. Settings. Yep. Oh, and then just share screen. Okay, we're good. So this was kind of the topics I was going to go through initially here. And so when we hop on the webinar call, we're going to take some time and, do introductions, obviously. What's that? Libba, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Catherine, can you hear me? I can hear. I'm not muted anymore. Farah, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So what I would suggest for this one is Farah, watch. We can be in this meeting and everything, but if you want to watch the YouTube channel for this during this time, because I know that's why I was muting this one. So now do you hear that double voice? Do you hear my double voice now or no? You can't hear me now? Libba, you can hear me, right?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Catherine, can you hear me? David, if you can hear me now? Okay. Okay. David can hear me too. So, um, Okay. So, anyways, we're good. Okay. So my initial thoughts was we're gonna come into the webinar. I'm gonna introduce you, Libba. We're gonna do some introductions and everything like that. And then I'm gonna go into a little bit of discussing why better data is quality data is better than a quantity of data, and discuss if you're new to collecting data or new to analyzing data. These are kind of the steps that we're going to want to take to start to identify what the data is, how to analyze it, and how to evaluate it. Again, like I said, I didn't get to prep these in time, but I'll just have like identify data sources on the tab or on the PowerPoint. And then in the background, I'll have some notes or something for me to touch on these extra sentences so you don't have a bunch of blurbs of words in the PowerPoint. But then we're going to talk identify data sources, analyze data volume, evaluate the data relevance to your question, look at the data completeness, consistency, and accuracy. And then this kind of plugs WinPure in there a little bit. By once you've analyzed that, you can start to clean your data, match your data, and then there's the continuous improvement of improving your data. Does that sound like a good order, good process there? I think it's in a good setup.
I like it.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So then once we get through this, obviously I'll have you and me, little. What was that? Okay. Um, and so then once we're done with this, I'll kind of get rid of this screen here. We'll stop sharing on this front. We'll come back here, and then we can start to go through those questions that we had previously discussed. While we're moving through them, I'm assuming over the weekend and stuff, you had the chance to kind of look over and do all that, right?
I did. I've got I just didn't get it typed in and sitting back to you,
Yeah,
but
no
I've
problem.
got all my major examples set out, trying to fit several of the questions on one example.
Okay. Okay, so you can just keep going back to the same
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
and then yeah, okay,
I mean,
that
I've
makes
got a
sense.
couple of different ones where we'll shift gears, but you know, John Deere always makes a good example.
Yeah, agreed. I've heard that from you so many times at this point. I like it, and it works. Perfect. So then, everybody else who's listening, we're gonna kind of just go through these questions a little bit, and we can do the rough answers from Libba, and then we'll go from there. All right. So Libba, when we're
I got one
talking,
quick question.
yeah.
What is
Yes, I can. Farah, yes.
what's the actual length of the webinar on Thursday?
I will. I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you, Farah. I'll send that to you, Libba. Catherine, you can hear us, right? Um, all right, David or Thomas out there. Is there lagging on your end as well, or is this isolated? Catherine, same question for you. Is this isolated or is this lagging for everybody?
have a lag
I
from
don't
me to you.
Yeah, I don't either on my end. Copy. I am about to send you the.
Is Thomas Green David?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I was going to say, he doesn't have a lag either. So
Perfect. At least we're getting some progress there. I am just sending you, Libba, this link.
okay.
Then once Farah is able to hear and see and everything, she had also mentioned that she found another way to make it so you could actually share the video on your LinkedIn if you wanted to.
Okay.
Where
That'd be
while we're
great.
going live, but we got to wait for her to get on for us to be able to know the steps for that part.
Okay.
And yes, Libba, or and yes, Farah, I am looking over here, but I will be looking over here during the webinar, so you're not seeing the side of my face the whole time. Perfect. So you can hear me now, Farah? I can hear you, Farah. Can you hear me? Farah, can you hear me if I unmute myself? Okay, so I have this muted. Otherwise, I have to. I hear. Yeah.
Let's see. I don't, but you know what? That's okay too. I'll just post one after it's all said and done. Okay. In the Google chat. Okay. Oh, there it is. I can. Okay. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I'm not logged in. Oh, I see it now. I see it now. Okay. I got it. And it needs me to create an account. I've not done that yet, but I can do that afterwards. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right. So now we're kind of just going to go through the questions. We don't have to, Libba, you don't have to do a full blown answer per se at this point, unless you want to. I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt for us to just go through it. So let's start
Well,
off with,
that's kind of why I wanted to know how long the
yeah.
the our time slot is, because I can get long winded and carried away, excited, and
No kidding. I get that. I'm the same way. Let's do. Clara, did you scheduled it for an hour, right?
Okay.
So yes, it was an hour. Perfect.
Okay, great.
Awesome. All right. So for our first question today here, I really wanted to ask you, Libba, can you share some common misconceptions about the notion that more data equals better data?
It's a huge misconception. I have a really good example from my previous career or my career in 19. Y'all can tell I'm nervous, so I'm working on that.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. We're good. Don't worry about it.
In 2008,
Especially because we have Catherine and Farah and David sitting here being the only ones watching us.
okay. All right, so wipe all that. Let me give you a little bit of context about the situation. If you've never dealt with the yield monitor, it's a device that works in conjunction with the combine or cotton picker, and it collects data generally every second. That's traditionally how it worked. Mm-hmm. So it's not even one full complete rotation of the tire of a tractor. And all this data gets stored and it's recording all this information. Now, yield monitor data is dirty. It is really, really dirty. People have gotten PhDs on writing about how dirty it is and what you must do to clean it up. And so traditionally, it went from like a 5-second interval to a 2-second interval, and then finally to a 1-second interval. So over the course of the years, this data amount has increased. In 2018, John Deere started collecting the data at 0.2 seconds. And so overnight, we went from 1-second data to 5 hertz data. So 5 times the amount of data transfer, 5 times the amount of storage, 5 times everything. And it was a nightmare. It crashed their own system. It crashed anyone's system who was working with that particular data at the time. And we got zero benefit from it across the board. The data was dirtier, if it was possible, and it would skew results significantly. And so in that instance, and I see this all the time, there was a drive to get more data, and it was a really hot topic across all industries. So they kept getting more data, but they're just a data deliverer. And so they're not working with analysis and management of that data really from the grower's perspective. And so now all of a sudden you had a ton of data that nobody knows what to do with, and it's harder to clean than it's ever been. And so the argument against it really is, so I got 5 times the data, but I have no more insight than I did before. And now it cost me more. It brought my system down, and I got to work harder to make use of it. When in reality, the 1-second data was probably good enough. And it was telling me and others exactly what they needed to know across the field to understand that environment and the yield response.
Yep.
So more data is not better data.
Exactly. Well, and I think that goes into the fact that you also nailed it with the skewed results as well. I mean, the more data that you're collecting, who's asking this? Oh, sorry, I had a mic thing. It was a Google Meet. Going back to the skewed data and everything. Yeah. So obviously more data could be beneficial, but you're also fighting with the potential of skewed data, especially with what we've talked about with agronomics and agronomics. Is that the right word? I don't know. Anyways, whatever.
You know what? There's so many hot buzzwords around it. You can call it whatever, and people go, "Okay, that's a new one. I'm going to add it to my list."
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But within that, I mean, to your point, we could be collecting all this data, but do we need it? Is it answering the question that we're looking to solve? And I
Exactly.
think with that, when you have the 1 second data versus the 0.2 second data, all you're doing is increasing the data quantity without actually understanding what you're using it for. And I think that that's kind of the problem that it sounds like John Deere was having.
Yeah. And therefore, any and everyone who is using John Deere data, and they are the leader in the industry. And what happens is all the other equipment providers get on board and they start doing it too. And so now you have this plethora of data that's really not adding any value to the grower, and certainly not to the data people in between.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. Perfect. Okay. And so, with that kind of in mind, when we're trying to answer questions, when we're trying to collect more data, from your perspective, how can an organization really identify better data from the vast amount of information that they are collecting?
What problem are you trying to solve? And
Right
that's
there.
what I mean, at the core of it, as data leaders, it's really kind of our job to be able to be intuitive and extract that from the people that we talk to. Because frequently, if you say, "Hey, what's your pain point?" they say, "Oh, I don't like the button where it is," or something else, right? Or I just need to see the numbers. It's our job to say, what are you going to do with the numbers? What problem are you trying to solve? And when you get down to what is that problem, then you can start to identify the data
Yeah.
that supports that versus just collecting data.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of collecting metric data on any work that's happening within the system that's automated. Who accessed what, where, when, lineage. But I'm not a big fan of just randomly collecting data out there in the world and stockpiling it, because it's time consuming, it's financially consuming, and it doesn't really tell you. And so you got to figure out the problem, and you got to figure out the context of the problem.
100%. And hold on 1 second. I'm going to unmute myself over here quick just for a second.
Okay. absolutely. I'm a big fan of skipping management and going to the doers first. Once you get an idea of what direction you're really trying to go, because most of the time, in my experience, what I have found is the upper levels of management really don't have a good take on what is happening day to day, especially in large organizations. It's a little bit easier in those smaller ones, but in large organizations, you tend to find that management, they see at a higher level, and that's their job and their role. And their people are the ones who are actually doing the work day to day, having the conversations with the customers. And so, honestly, they're the ones who know, and they'll be the ones who know what data is available. I love this question because I feel like people can learn more from my unsuccessful attempts than my successful attempts. I'll tell you not how to do it and what I learned from it. Early in my career, I was hired and brought in to basically change the way that we did research. And research traditionally, pencil, paper, out in the field, manual ratings, and all of that, right? And it was my job to take that and digitize it. And this was long before the lexicon of digital transformation or data science was coined at that time, but it wasn't part of the lexicon, so people didn't talk about it all the time. We just called it advanced statistics. Where's the statistician on this? Um, so I was hired to take data that had been collected and really do two things: build a process that would let us understand better where we could maximize genetic potential of a seed. So does it grow better in acidic soils versus basic soils? So we could, by geography, start putting those into the marketplace in the right locations. The flip side of that too was there was a push to go to geographically based pricing. So when I get there, and very young in my career, believe people when they say, we have the data for that. We have it. We just need your expertise in doing something with it. I get in there and data person to the core, I said, okay, let me see the data. And the first thing you guys would probably do that I did, I started cleaning and validating that data. 75% of it wouldn't validate spatially, meaning coordinate information that had been provided did not match the county or city that was listed. So theoretically, we shouldn't be able to use that data, right? So I'm going through all this data, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And so I get asked to come into the room to leadership and present what's going on in progress. And I bring up my map and I show them so that they can see what's going on and how we're going to need to modify our processes to be able to do what they want to do. But what they heard in the way that I presented it in that room was, you've been bad at your jobs. Because I said, we've got bad data, right? And immediately, and this is a room full of PhD agriculturalists, right? They pride themselves on good data and non-biased data. And so I immediately put up a wall that was very difficult to take down over time. What I should have done differently was I should have put in the time to understand the human interactions that were going to take place and understand how they needed to hear it and how to make it relevant to things that they are concerned about, and started with that point. And then highlight the risk to those desires and accomplishments. And it'll be different for every single person in the room. And so you've got to make sure that you find a way to do an all-encompassing, here's what's going to happen to the business if we do it with what we have right now, and here's our risk. And research those things. And it took a long time to overcome the damage that I did in that one meeting. And I had to basically reset and then start working with professionals who were there and had been there a long time, who had authority and respect, but not necessarily executive or title, who could be influencers for me until I could repair the damage. That's absolutely right. That's I love that you brought that up, because thinking back now, we sit in the middle world, right? We we're all over the place because we sit in the middle and we see data ecosystems. And the point about the CFO, so I had a great mentor who sat with me afterwards and said, let's look at all our plays here, right? And we went through the process of saying, okay, if we're going to talk to the financial people, here's what we're going to talk about. And we talked about how we could, so weigh wagons are a really, really big expense for research facilities and companies. We talked about if we would make the transition to yield monitor data, because we weren't even using yield monitor data at that time in this part. And the amount of time that you could harvest a trial in versus using the weigh wagons. One weigh wagon trial used to take 8 or 9 hours. It was a whole day per trial. If we could move to the yield monitors, it was going to be 2 trials per day, and only because of travel time from one area to the next. Not only that, we were going to be able to reduce the weigh wagon repurchase, which is about every 3 or 4 years. So we were able to put the numbers to it and say, okay, if we look at this at a 5-year plan, we're saving the company several $1 million in this area, or shifting that money to better processes, people, better quality, better products. And so I was very grateful to have this mentor help me get through that. It was so invaluable, but it gave me the tool set to start to understand. I needed to know every single part of the business and how to communicate with them. Marketing was a whole different scenario, but none of them cared about the exact data, right? They cared about the results and the problems we're solving. That's okay. Thank you. Significantly. And if I ever had a plug for master data management, it would be this, right? And this happens in the smallest of companies and in the largest of companies. But data quality is absolutely critical. And I have a great example for this. We set up a system in one place where it was designed first and foremost to manage data for growers, not the growers themselves, but their trusted advisor. And it really was not a front end, but a back end system that did a lot of stuff, right? And in that system, it was the first. And so we didn't really have a customer database at the time. So we used that as our customer database. And I had set it up thinking that eventually we would go into a situation where we needed to feed this into a customer relationship management tool and financing. Well, in a period of very rapid growth, adding, going from 10 people to 120 people within a short few months, everybody was so busy and so swamped, we ended up with the second customer database that was not connected to the actual database that measured things like true acreage, who owns what field. And then the customer database had assumptions about it, such as, oh yeah, everybody knows exactly how many acres they have. We're going to put in 2,500 acres. Well, it may have really only been, 1,792 based on physical evidence. And so even at a very small scale, reconciling those two scenarios just to get billing out of the door became an enormous effort that took 5 or 6 people a week, at least once a month. And it got really bad to the point where it was almost like someone had to be dedicated full time to matching because there was no name reinforcement. How many different ways is there to write Bob Willingham, A&A Farms? A lot of different ways to write that. And so, when something like that happens, and some people, those data silos, right? It's a nightmare for the company because it takes so much more time and effort. Your billing is not going to be right. Your follow-up with your customers is not going to be right. And your employees are probably not going to trust everything because they're looking at information from 2 different systems and it doesn't reconcile. And if your employees don't trust you, they're not going to convey the message to your customers to trust you. What role does technology play? Well, it plays a huge role, but I think sometimes people lose data in technology, and they are separate and distinct entities. And, I would make the argument technology exists for the sole purpose of data. It does. And I've done research on this, and I can't find one software application that doesn't start with some need or input, whether it's a word or a letter or data, but that's why it exists. Even word processing must have someone else input something into it to actually be a word process. And so it's critical. But I don't like the concept of it exists, therefore these things exist, because it's not all technology, right? And I would say data has always existed. The mechanisms of the world have always existed. People have always behaved in certain ways. Mm-hmm. It's just that technology has enabled us to actually capture that information now or measure it where we didn't have that throughout history.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and that answers that question right there, which is we've always had data around us. It's obviously increased over time because of our access to it. But within that, the technology itself isn't. I just got a notification saying this go-to meeting is going to end in 8 minutes. Just as an FYI, I have no idea why. Apparently it was set for an hour, even though I have it for an hour and 45. So anyways, after this ends, Catherine and Farah, you can feel free to hop off, and Libba, you and me can just finish off using the StreamYard app just to work through it and stuff, because we'll still have it saved and recorded, and everybody else and Farah and Catherine can watch it later for this last little bit and stuff. But going back to the technology piece, I think that really what the technology is doing, it's not creating the data. The data's always been there. It's helping you isolate different components of the data, sort the data to understand it in different ways. And so I think that really the key need for the technology is the overall fact that we now have all this data around us coming from all different angles, and the technology kind of helps put a field, if you will, in front of us and almost like a TV. All the information is coming into the technology, whatever tool you're using, and that tool is then spitting out the information to the leadership or to the salesperson or to whoever in a way that they're able to understand and make sense of it. I think
Absolutely.
yeah.
One of my favorite examples is cotton. I love this example because I think it lays it out really well. So cotton grows, it is what it is. It's nasty and dirty when it comes in out of the field, but cotton's been around for a long, long time. And we went from planting it by hand to planting it with mules to harvesting by hand to harvesting with cotton pickers to harvesting with cotton pickers with yield monitors on them, right? But the thing is, the cotton doesn't exist because of the cotton picker.
Right.
The cotton picker exists and lets us do a lot more picking because of the cotton.
Yep.
And and the cotton itself is what actually creates value in the value chain of precision ag and precision equipment and digital agronomy and transportation and logistics and mercantiles and people who make the clothing and weave the fabric. But none of that exists without the cotton fiber.
Right. Exactly.
And at the end of the day, it's still cotton.
Yep.
You can't do anything to chemically make it anything else.
Yep.
It's always cotton, and you got to burn it to get rid of it. So, I like to think of it in those kind of terms when it comes to the technology. Boy, it's great, but don't forget its purpose is to facilitate this.
Yep. Exactly right. I like that analogy. That's a really good analogy. That's awesome.
I've been thinking about how to share that more with the broader ag community because I think, off topic, precision agriculture has been equated with digital agronomy, and they're not the same. Precision agriculture is an agronomic strategy that has been in existence since the day we started planting next to the river in Mesopotamia, because it's about resource management.
Yep.
And, all the way through history, it's still about what's the best resource management, whatever that resource is, whether it's farm labor, chemistry, seed, and sustainability for the farmer and his family, right? Yep. Financially. So all of that is now facilitated and better because of digital agronomy, which is all of the technology.
Yep. Right there. Exactly right. I love that. Awesome. Okay. See here. I got to skim through these other questions just to see if. All right. Can you highlight the key benefit organizations?
Will this give us a transcript?
I hope so. I don't know. Laura, will this give us a transcript also, or just a recording? Okay. So we will have one.
Okay. I was just thinking I would really appreciate it too if I could read through the transcript and kind of. I want to learn. I'm working on conciseness.
I get it. I'm right there too. But yeah, I'm hoping so too, because then after this we can kind of re-review the recordings and the transcripts and and then I'll send you a updated version of these questions where they're kind of in order that we've done it on here, and then on top of that as well, I think that I'll break out some sub points. I'll get rid of the current sub points on there and put in some sub points from our conversation today.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that will be more specific. So then that way, like as we're going through a question, I could have in there Libba and kind of the topic you talked about, and then maybe something I'll talk about during that question. But but I think that'll be good, and I'll do
Okay.
that later today. Perfect. All right, and so let's see here. So next question is, can you share some practices? Could you have some examples from your experience where what are some common challenges faced when shifting? All right, so I think we've really been on the front side of data talking about how to convince your company to shift to better data. I think now I'll kind of shift it over to the other side and start to talk about, well, I guess, do you think this should be a good question to keep on here, or do you think you've answered this enough in the other questions that I've asked, which is, what are some common challenges that organizations face when trying to shift their focus to better data, and how can these be overcome? I feel like we've answered that a lot in other questions.
I like the question. I don't think I've gotten in detail or a little bit more detail on it, because I've really talked about the soft skills, right?
Yeah.
And this is still a soft skill. I don't know. I feel like it has a place, because I think it's a great opportunity to say, you got to help the others get there.
Yep.
So I don't know. I keep going back in my mind. I keep going back to that placement pricing piece.
Okay.
And when I started talking to those frontline people, they would, I would just say, hey, can you tell me about what happens when you go have a conversation with the grower? What, when you're putting this information or got it, and it was still pencil and paper, and it was mailed in, and it was manually entered by someone else.
Gotcha.
And when I started asking them, and then asking them what they thought the purpose of the data was, it was very different than what the leadership thought, right? And so it was serving the purpose of the people in the field, talking with the growers. Their sole purpose was to put out different seed from competitors along with theirs on a grower's field and see which one did better.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it was local. They weren't thinking about how it was going to mesh in the whole world of data that the company was using. And it was doing what it needed to do for them. And if they had one that they didn't win, they didn't send in the data. And so that was very, very different. And so they didn't send in the data. But it could have been good or bad anyway, right? Because we don't know. There was zero to manage that. And it was very different from the executive leadership. And so I think there's something there. I don't know exactly how to work that in, because what it came down to is, one, everybody needed to be aligned on what the goal of the data was.
Yep.
And then two, how are we going to do it so we can make it really usable?
Yep.
So that needs to be addressed. Yep. And that is the quality of the data you're getting, and what are you going to use it for?
Yep. 100%. Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot there I could go down.
I think then we'll keep that there, just because I think, to your point, it allows you to get a little bit deeper into some of the challenges that will be focused. So we can do that one. I'll go move this one to.
And I keep thinking, and I'm thinking it now, so it's probably going to come out of my mouth at some point. I don't know where exactly to stick it. There is this concept from, and I call them algorithm writers. It's because data science is such a broad term that it's very unclear.
Yeah.
And so you've got algorithm writing, machine learning people. The purpose of data for them is to build a pristine model that works. Yeah. And they will determine that something is not clean when it's perfect for the purpose for which it was designed and collected.
Yep.
And if you go back to the yield monitor data scenario, it depends on who's doing what with that data coming in and off the tractor. If you're looking for inch by inch to understand agronomics, your chemistry, your biology, your ecosystem inside your field, wholeheartedly, you need a lot of that data. Maybe not 5 hertz data, but a lot of it.
Yep.
But if you're looking for, and the data can be used for both purposes, but if you're looking for a whole field average to submit to your crop insurance, which has an entirely different metric system and is not even necessarily tied to a particular field, then that data is fine, right? Because you're just looking at averages, and there's a pretty big range that you can fit within to be within that average.
Yeah.
And so it's really all about the purpose of the data. And so when you're having the conversations with the algorithm writers, clean to them means one thing, but clean to someone else may mean something else. You talk to somebody who leads all of data governance, clean means meet the standards.
Yep.
It meets the standards. It's not without its range.
Yep.
Got a great story on that one too, if we want to dig down into that one. That's the one about where one of the algorithm writers decided that corn couldn't be a certain yield. So if it was low yield corn in the model that we took to production, he changed it to soybean. And vice versa. He decided soybean couldn't be this high. And so when this got pushed into production and we hadn't consulted the subject matter experts on the results, it wreaked havoc, because now we've got all of these insights coming out for the wrong crops.
Yep, exactly right.
And it's just a really good example of how you need to understand what you're using the data for.
Yep. Well, and on that note too, I just made a note here. And I'm wondering if we want to put this somewhere near the beginning of the webinar.
Okay.
But another question that just popped in my mind while you were talking about that example is, when we start the webinar, it might be good for me to ask you, when we're talking about quality data, when we're talking about good data, what does that mean to different people? And I think the reason I also want to call this out is because in our webinar, how we've been talking about it, we're talking about kind of shifting the stakeholders' mindsets and helping them to understand what good data means versus quantity of data. And so I'm wondering if we start off somewhere in the beginning, quality data, good data can mean so many different things to so many different roles. It could, to your point, for an individual who's focused on data governance, then it's focused on meeting the standards. If it's focused on sales, then it's meeting the metrics or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's different. And so in today's webinar, we're going to be focusing more on the what category, I guess, the decision making. How can I phrase that? But do you know what I'm saying here? Like,
yes, yeah. Well, I guess I always see it from what's our problem. So I'm thinking we need to understand the context to be able to understand what clean and quality mean.
Yeah. Perfect. So that's not even nailing it down to a specific category. That's more of talking from a high level. Well, it doesn't matter if you're in this field, if you're in this field, and if you're in this field. what we're talking about today is the understanding of what you're trying to solve and the
Yeah.
context behind it. Obviously I'll rephrase that in a better way, but I think that kind of
I I like that concept. I can't do anything without saying we got to figure out the problem first.
yep.
And it's almost like it's a natural wall that I've got, because I'm like, where are we going if we're not going somewhere?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
But that's, yeah, and I've been very privileged to be able to work cross-functional, meaning with the finance people, with the marketing people, with the sales teams, with the researchers, with across the board, because I get to have such a broad view. I think it's critical for data people to get that broad scale experience.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, but it's different for each one of these people and organizations and units on what clean means.
Yep. Exactly right. Exactly. So yeah, that was just something I think that I'll put that up near the top of our questions to kind of
Okay.
clarify to people, because obviously, we could have a guest who's a data scientist, and then we could have a guest who's a sales manager. And so it may be good that at the beginning we're like, it can mean this or it can mean this, just so
Yeah.
you guys, something along those lines. I don't know. I'll figure out how to phrase it, but we'll go.
I'm just smiling because those are some of the conversations I like to watch the most.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
They're fun.
All right. So two things here. One, we got about 15 minutes left. I will say that I'm wondering if we want to quickly review the remaining questions and
Okay.
because I think we need to see. I don't think we're going to be able to get through all 10 of these questions, which I think we already assumed we weren't going to be
Right.
able to. And keeping in mind as well that I was going to have that PowerPoint at the beginning that I just skimmed through, but will realistically take maybe 5 minutes or something like that of time. So I think let's skim through these other questions that remain, and I'll highlight a couple of them that we think are more priority type of questions. So one would be, what strategies can be employed to effectively clean and select relevant data for valuable insights? It's number 3. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. So this is where I actually had made notes to myself. I said, first, let's talk about what is clean data.
Yeah.
And understanding the context of what we're trying to do. So that's where I told you it was sitting in there somewhere.
Perfect. So we'll keep that one.
And I actually used the whole field of yield monitor data versus averaging it all and shipping it off to crop insurance. And so, and I talk about the importance of the data cleaning of the yield monitor data is one of the things I have listed here. What a lot of people don't understand is because that data is geospatial, there's a very deep level of complexity that's added to it. And one of the things you have to be extremely careful of when dealing with that type of data is maintaining the spatial integrity. You can clean that data and statistically everything makes sense. It's perfect. You're ready to ship out the door. And then you can look at the corresponding visuals and it looks like a Picasso. and it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And what you're seeing is the result of changing that data in a way that it is no longer valuable at all.
Yep.
And so if you're trying to look at environment, and that's what it is, right? We're looking at environment and all the things that go into and come out of it. Yep. Then it's critical to get the spatial integrity piece right. It's not critical for the crop insurance guys, right? They want a number and to go on.
Yep, exactly.
And so that's where I really touched on that. And then I didn't, the leveraging technology for data cleansing. You can automate a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things. And I am a huge fan of automation where it makes sense.
Yeah.
But as of today, we still can't replace an agronomist who has experience to look at the map and say, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
We can't do it. Now, we can do a lot of things to work with that and say, that's not quite right. But at the end of the day, the grower is making huge financial decisions on the insights we give them based on what we do. And so it's absolutely critical for the technology to support the agronomist. So what we did is we actually, once we had designed all our systems, we had it set up though so that as soon as, say, like a soil map had been generated, it would send a notice on Slack to the agronomist with a picture so they could see immediately. And the check took like, I don't know, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, because these things stand out.
Yeah.
I mean, they really stand out. So they were able to either accept or reject right there from their phone, and they didn't have to go back to their desk. They didn't have to wait on a data visualization specialist to look at it and make sure it looked good and then email and say, hey, what does this look like? But we needed to put the final check back into the hands of the agronomist. Because they're the ones who know.
Yep.
And so using the technology in that way, big, huge fan of it. Automatically deciding it's good or bad today, no.
Right. Exactly right. I like that. Okay, cool. I like that one. Perfect. Another one here is number 5. Can you share some effective practices for fostering a culture of data awareness and collaboration within an organization? This one, again, though, unless you have a specific example that's going to be solid, I also think that this is one that you've talked about quite a bit in other questions as well.
Yeah, I don't really have I could give 100 examples, and so I think it feeds into my philosophy that I talk around now anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we need this one in here because I really do think that you touch on fostering a culture of data awareness in pretty much every one of your examples and conversations. So I think I'll remove number 5.
Okay.
Put this one as going away.
Okay.
Perfect.
That one.
Let's see here. And then it looks like we got 2 other questions that I have not officially asked. One would be number 7. Could you share some examples from your experience where focusing on better data led to significant business improvements? Again, this is one that this one's going to be up to you. If you have good examples for this, we could do it. But I also know that you've really been providing good examples for this question within other questions as well. So
yeah, I was thinking back to what we'd already talked about, and the one where we talked about my mentor who helped me do the financial piece and say, oh, hey, when we really started breaking down, and I think I talked about it, how much money we were going to save the company and get better results from it.
Yep.
And so that's a really good example. I've got one more good example that I'm still kind of amazed by it. I had a whole bunch of agronomists who were doing a lot of amazing work, and they were personally storing data on their laptops, creating algorithms and emailing them to each other. And when they would need to go get data, such as, let's say, LiDAR data, they would go get it somewhere on the internet, and then they would bring it in, and then they would manually process it themselves. This work was taking like 2 weeks. And so and truth is, we couldn't grow the business because you can't have your agronomist data wrangling.
Right.
They don't have that much time. And so what we did is I thin sliced it all the way through. And I'm a big fan of compartmentalization, huge fan of it. And we built the compartments individually. And then we were able to put all those compartments connected through an event-driven system. And we took that process that was eating up their nights, and we went from 2 weeks to 30 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Ready to make a decision.
That's amazing.
And I know that 30 seconds seems like a really long time for people in the IT and technology world. But when you were doing it for 2 weeks,
yep,
and now you could do it, hey, here's my input,
yep,
and here's your answer. That was huge.
I mean, that's huge in so many levels. It's not just huge for decision-making aspects. It's huge for the agronomist and their work efforts. It's huge for the ROI on the business. Talk about savings and paying those agronomists their salaried or hourly wages, whatever, and cutting it from 2 weeks to 30 seconds, and the rest of the time can be focused on something else. I mean,
working with the customers or getting new customers.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, it just changes. That changes everything. That's a great example. I like that one.
It's one of my favorites. I still remember the very first diagram I did on the slicing. And I went back and I said, do y'all understand what's going on here? And it was kind of like, but it was really eye-opening for everyone, right?
Yep, I agree. Okay, and another thing I just realized, and I'm hoping it's not the case, is for that first portion of this webinar, well, for a section of this webinar, I had the webinar muted for myself so that Farah could hear me on there. So I'm hoping when I end this broadcast and I can re-look at things, it still heard me in some way. Otherwise, all my little sections.
Well, you know what? If you want to, you and I can get together tomorrow and kind of go through the final list.
You must not have read my LinkedIn message. I messaged you earlier and I said, because of something along the lines of, because of the beginning of this shit show of a webinar setup here, we may want to meet up for an hour tomorrow just to talk.
Oh, no, I didn't see it. Yeah, look, I have to close all my stuff or I'll get distracted.
Oh, I know. I'm right there with you.
So I have 2 big giant monitors. I put them to the side because I didn't want to be distracted by them either.
Exactly. But yeah, no, you read my mind. I think it'll be good that if we could just hop on a call tomorrow just to touch base and either roughly go through it real quick.
Yeah.
In an hour meeting, or just go through the list, whatever works. But I think it'll be good for us to touch base again tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay. And then the last question I have on my list is number 10, which is, can you highlight the key benefits organizations can expect to reap when they focus on better, more purposeful data? This one, again, obviously has been talked about quite a bit through the other questions, talking ROIs, talking quicker decision making. So this is another one that I'm going to leave in your hands on if you think I should specifically ask this question or if we touch on it enough in all the other questions.
Okay. On number 11, it says start your data collection journey. I feel like we did that at the beginning. But this may have been the first list we had. and it says, we decided, okay, we're talking to beginners.
Oh, yeah. So I have it a little worded differently on mine, I think. But yes, that one is tied to the PowerPoint that I'm going to do.
Okay, perfect.
So you can ignore 11. That's the PowerPoint that I'll present at the beginning.
Okay, so number 10, I think, is more like our wrap up, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
The truth is, the benefits of focusing on better quality data is we could sit here all day and spit out answers to this question from a societal point of view, from an ethical point of view. But at the end of the day, companies are in the business of making money, or they wouldn't exist, most of them.
Yep.
And the ones that aren't in the business of making money, they're doing business with the ones who do because they want to service someone or something as a nonprofit. But their job is still to extract money or value from those who have it.
Exactly.
And so sometimes I feel like it can be kind of soul sucking at times, because it's always, well, what's the investment? What's the return on investment? How are we going to make money with this? But it's important to remember, you do have to make money. That's why a business exists, right? So we'll get that evil out of the way, and we'll say, what do we do from there? Or how does it help that? And all these other things too.
Yep.
If you look at context, it will help your business. If you get relevant information back to the whole pricing model and placement, getting the right information would have been much better than getting 3,000 trials in and we don't know where they were.
Yep.
Not really.
Yep.
So I would have rather had 1,500 that I knew specifically it had grown in this environment.
Yep.
We didn't meet the objective, and we still had a lot of data that wasn't doing what we needed it to do.
Yep.
And we spent a lot of money on it. We talked to a lot of customers and brought them into our story with us because they put these on their fields.
Mm-hmm.
And so not being able to give them the results that they wanted back from that, that's problematic, because now we've invited them into a story that we can't write an ending to that's good.
Yeah.
And so all of these things, you could sit there, oh no, did my dog got out.
Go ahead. No, go for it. We can hop off now and everything. I'll end the broadcast. Okay. Don't hit the end broadcast, just close out. I'll hit end broadcast and then go get your dog.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, we'll connect later today, sum up, whatever, and then we'll visit tomorrow.
Perfect. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.